I got an interesting fact for you. It's about dolphins. You have heard many stories about dolphins. Stories about boats sinking and the survivors being stuck in the water as hungry sharks circled around the people, sometimes all night long, and the dolphins kept the sharks away. There's dogs that have fallen into the water, and dolphins have helped keep the dogs afloat until they could be rescued. There's stories about a whale which had a little one that was stillborn. The mother had given up on the baby because she knew it was dead. But the dolphins figured it needs to breathe. So they would keep on bringing it to the surface, hoping it would get that last breath of life. There's also a story about a guy that was surfing out by Australia. And while he was surfing, a shark bit his leg. It took a big hunk out of his leg. Well, now it leaves a trail of blood, which brings all the other sharks around just to investigate it. Well, the dolphins realized the problem and decided we are going to protect the swimmer. The swimmer, even though he had a bite on his leg, got on his surfboard and paddled all the way to shore with the dolphins protecting him. Dolphins are amazing. Years ago, there was a show called Flipper. This will show my age. It was between 1964 and 67. And it showed about two boys and their father who had a dolphin. The dolphin helped them in many of their different problems. But there's one special dolphin I want to tell you about. That was the name of Polaris Jack. Polaris Jack is a rhesus dolphin. He lives in the Cook Strait, New Zealand. He was 13 foot long and was on a white color with gray lines and a round white head. This is an uncommon species in the New Zealand area. Those waters don't have rhesus dolphins. There's only been 13 dolphins that have been reported in that area. But Jack was first seen around 1888 when he appeared in front of the schooner Brittle. When the ship approached the French Pass, a channel located near two islands, when the members of the crew saw the dolphin bobbing up and down in front of the ship, they wanted to kill it. But the captain's wife talked them out of it. To their amazement, the dolphin then proceeded to guide the ship through the narrow channel. Dolphins will jump out of the water to get more speed if they need more speed, because in the water there is more drag. So if the boat needed more speed at certain times going through that channel, he would jump out of the water to let them know you need more speed. Or otherwise they would just swim ahead of them to let them know in which direction. With rocks and strong currents, the area is dangerous to ships, but no shipwreck occurred when Jack was present. In 1904, a drunken sailor aboard the SS Penguin tried to shoot Jack with a rifle. Despite the attempt on his life, Jack continued to help ships. But according to the folklore, however, he no longer helped the SS Penguin which shipwrecked in the Cook Strait on 1909. Jack guided the ships swimming alongside a watercraft for up to 20 minutes at a time. If the crew could not see Jack at first, they often waited for him to appear. They were willing to put their total faith in Jack's leading. Faith, found in your dictionary, says a complete trust or confidence in someone or something, or a strong belief in God or in doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. If I asked you to tell me a book in the book, if I asked you to tell me about a book of faith, most of you would say Hebrews. And yes, Hebrews 11 is the faith chapter. But I would say the book of faith is the whole Bible. There are so many stories of faith in there. Just in Hebrews 11, there are ones like Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses' parents, Moses himself, Joshua, and Rahab. And that's just a few of them. Sometimes there was stories about just the one person, and sometimes would be a couple of people. If you look in 1 Samuel 14, it tells of the faith of Jonathan and his armor bearer. They asked the Lord if they should climb a cliff and attack the Philistines. The Lord told them yes, and they had faith in the Lord's leading, and they ended up defeating the Philistines. Gideon and a small band of 300 men were wondering if they would be able to defeat the Midianites' army with just a trumpet, an empty pitcher, and a torch inside the pitcher. They believed in the Lord and defeated the Meridians, which is found in Judges 7. Well, I want to tell you about two other women in the Bible. They don't give a name for either one of them, but let me tell you about them. They are both found in 2 Kings 4. Elisha had been with Elijah up until he was taken to heaven. He went with him as they visited the schools of the prophets. So in turn, he would visit them also. If you go to 2 Kings 4, 1 through 6, we will read the story about the one woman. Starting with verse 1, a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. And the creditors are coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves." So Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" And she said, "Your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil." Then he said, "Go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels, but do not gather a few." And when they had come in, You shall shut the door behind you and your sons, then pour it into all those vessels and set aside the full ones. So she went with them, and went into the door and shut it behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is no other vessel." So the oil ceased. She had faith that the Lord was going to do something special. What if she didn't have that faith and just had gone out and grabbed an armload of empty vessels and said, "If we fill these and run out of empty vessels, we will just go out and get some more"? But once the door was shut, there was not a chance to go out and look for more. Do we say, "This should be enough"? If we run out, we will just go get more. But what if you said, "The Lord will bless us more than what we can ever imagine"? The Lord will do more if you have the faith in what He will do. Let me tell you about another story. This one is found in 2 Kings 4:8. Starting with verse 8. Now it happened one day that Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was, as often as he passed by, he would turn in there to eat some food. Now Elisha would go to visit the sons of the prophets. So he would end up passing through Shushan on his way. Shushan was about 20 miles from Mount Carmel. Back then, that was a day's journey. Well, if you did all your traveling by foot in that arid area, that's like traveling from Jim and Sheila's home to here. When it's 100 degrees out, that is. And there's very few trees. So for Elisha, it was a nice break. Get something to eat and to drink, and there was time to visit and make friends. Going to verse 9, and she said to her husband, "Look now, I know that this is a holy man of God who passes by us regularly. Please let us make a small upper room on the wall, and let us put a bed for him there, and a table, a chair, and a lampstand. So it will be whenever he comes to us, he can turn in there." And it happened one day that he came there, and he turned into the upper room and laid down there. Then he said to Gehazi, his servant, "Call this Shunammite woman." When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, "Say now to her, 'Look, you have been concerned for us with all this care that you've given us. What can I do for you? Do you want me to speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?" She answered, "I dwell among my own people." So he said, "What then is to be done for her?" Gehazi answered, actually, she has no son, and her husband is old. Back then, sons were your livelihood. When the husband would die, there would be no livelihood. But if there was a son, he would take over the land, he would take over everything, and be able to take care of you. So he said, call her. When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, no, my lord, man of God, do not lie to your maidservant. But the woman conceived and bore a son when the appointed time had come, of which Elisha had told her. And the child grew. Now it happened one day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, my head, my head. So he said to his servant, carry him to his mother. When he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knee till noon, and then he died. This could have been a heat stroke. If you ask Helen and Dan, they can tell you about heat strokes. It is caused by extreme heat and not getting enough fluids in your body. And that fluids is what your body needs. You get very sick and your head starts pounding. But sitting in the shade and drinking water doesn't always help. Now they go ahead and give you electrolytes in your water. That is what your body is missing. Verse 21, and she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God. Then she called to her husband and said, please send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come back. So he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she said, it is well. She knew that the God of Elisha could make all things well again. She just needed to go see him and tell him the problem. Verse 24. Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you. And so she departed and went to the man of God at Mount Carmel. Now this happened at noon, and it's a day journey by foot just to get there. But taking a donkey could lessen the time. Donkeys are not for speed. They are just for carrying loads, and they just plod along. You might be able to shorten it by 4 hours by taking a donkey, but it will definitely save some time. So it was when the man of God saw her afar off that he said to his servant Gehazi, look, the Shunammite woman. Please run now to meet her and say to her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child? And she answered, it is well. She was wanting to talk to Elisha, and she was pressed for time. She wanted to avoid being detained by any further conversation. Verse 27. Now when she came to the man of God at the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to push her away. But the man of God said, "Let her alone, for her soul is deeply distressed, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me." So she said, "Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" Then he said to Gehazi, "Get yourself ready, take my staff in your hand, and be on your way. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not answer him, but lay my staff on the face of the child." At this point, Elijah realized why she wanted help right now. The Shunammite woman probably hadn't heard about Elijah raising the widow's son at Zarephath. That was the first person raised from the dead. And the woman of Zarephath, she was a Gentile. The Shunammite woman knew the God of Elisha could do anything, because he had told her that the next year she would be having a son, which happened to be just like he had said. She had faith in Elisha's God. Verse 30, "And the mother of the child said, 'As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you.' So he arose and followed her." In other words, she was saying, "I'm staying here until you come with me." She knew that with Elisha praying to his God, that things would happen. And a stick on the face, that wasn't faith. She wanted to have faith in a God. Now Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went back to meet him and told him, saying, "The child was not awakened." When Elisha came to the house, there was a child lying dead on his bed. He went in, therefore, shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. And he went up and laid on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, his hands on his hands. And he stretched himself out on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. After praying, he stretched out on the boy like Elijah had. The boy had been dead for a long time. The body was cold. But Elisha had faith. God is the maker of life. He is the creator of all life. And warmth came back into the cold, dead body. And again, he went up and stretched himself on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. I have looked at this child. It had sneezed 7 times, and it opened his eyes. The 7 in the Bible is a number of completeness. Was the Lord telling Elisha the miracle is complete? Because Elijah had to stretch himself out on the child 3 times and pray. I don't know. I don't know if that, I do know that their faith in God brought about the miracle. Going to verse 36. And he called Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite woman." So he called her, and when she came in to him, she said, "Pick up your son." So she went in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she picked up her son and went out. My question to you today is, where is your faith at? It's like the story of the dolphin. The captain of the boat couldn't see what was ahead of him in the water. He just knew that the dolphin could see what's in the water, and he had never lost a boat. Jesus can see what's out there. Things might look tough, but if we let him do the leading, he has never lost one yet. We got our grandson here this weekend too. And it's like this morning, he was busy playing and he broke one of the little tables. So what did he do? He brought it to Grandpa. Why? He had faith that Grandpa can fix anything. Faith is a tool that the Lord gives each one of us. There are many stories of faith in the Bible. When you go through the different stories, look and see where the faith becomes involved. These examples of human steadfastness bear witness to the faithfulness of God's promises, of his abiding presence and sustaining grace. They testify to the power of faith to withstand the powers of the world. It is a work of faith to rest in God in the darkest hour, to feel however sorely tried, the tempest tossed, that our Father is at the helm. The eye of faith alone can look beyond the things of time to estimate aright the worth of the eternal riches. It is found in Acts of the Apostles, page 575. There are many stories of faith in the Bible, and it's like I had just picked two. And those were two people that didn't even have a name. It didn't give a name, but they had faith. They knew who their God was. They knew by believing what is in the Bible and what God says, miracles can happen each and every day. So when you go through your Bible, look. The Lord has messages in there. He wants us to put our faith in him. And without our faith in him, we will be kind of like those that were in the one ship that didn't have the faith of the dolphin and ended up being crashed and sinking. So with that, we will now sing our closing song.